Radiohead guitarist Ed O'Brien, aka EOB, released his debut solo album called Earth earlier this year to critical acclaim, and fans of Radiohead like myself were thrilled at the face-melting blast of riffs, hand-aloft synth lines, and rhythms that wouldn't be out of place on, say, Radiohead's Kid A or even Tom York's solo project. Produced largely by Flood, Earth featured Laura Marling and Portishead's Adrian Uxley. Ed has recently shared two great songs as EOB. One of them is called Brazil, which features Colin Greenwood on bass. He's in Radiohead too. And the ambient piece Santa Teresa. Joining me now is Ed O'Brien. Hey, Ed, thanks so much for joining me. Congratulations on a fine record. But more importantly, how do you feel now that it's out?
Well, when I made it, I was just like, I was really happy, relieved, and I felt like when you write a song, what you want to do, you want to see its potential fulfilled, and I think we did that. And now we finished the record, and I'm like, okay, I feel really happy with it, but I'm already thinking about the next one and thinking how I can make it greater and improve on it. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. Thank you.
Is that how you like to work? You're always thinking about songs or partial songs, and it's just for you rather than the other band that you have?
Well, no, I mean, this is a kind of a relatively new thing. I mean, before in Radiohead, like, I was always like working on, not necessarily new songs, but, new sounds and then how they might be appropriate for new songs. With this, it's different. I'm not working on new songs as per se at the moment, because for me, the songs come out of what am I being inspired by? What I'm seeking at the moment is what's the kind of music that is inspiring me? What's the kind of thing? And it's quite interesting because it's changed. Like the music that I was inspired by when I was making this record, is I'm not so inspired by. I don't need to hear that music. Whereas before, now I'm seeking something else. So that will naturally lead on to, how the next songs come out.
What's it like when you decide to work on a solo album? Do you have to go through the band or dozens of people to ensure that it doesn't mess with Radiohead's schedule?
Well, I mean, I'm fortunate in the sense that I'm not the trailblazer in Radiohead on this. There's Tom, Johnny, and Philip are all doing stuff outside of Radiohead. So there's a lot of, Radiohead have only made 2 albums in the last 10 years. So there's more time away from Radiohead these days than there is in Radiohead. And I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing. I just think that that's the consequence of a band who worked pretty much non-stop we worked all of the 90s non-stop. We worked all of the noughties pretty much non-stop. And we watched the first part of the last decade non-stop. So, and the middle part. So, I just feel it's not that difficult. For the last 10 years, there's been a lot of downtime. So, it's quite easy. I mean, what was tricky was starting this record and demoing it, and then I had to put everything on ice in order to make the Radiohead record and then tour it. So it was kind of, the hard part was recapturing the essence, the spirit of those demos some 3 years on. And I found that quite tricky. But on the whole, it's not a hard thing to work out time-wise.
I'd love to talk to you more about that. Did you work any differently with the Earth album? Is it different when you have a band like Radiohead, and if you're stuck on a song, that you have other musicians in the band to bounce ideas off of? I mean, for Earth, it's just you. You're the leader. You decide everything.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm trying to work it out because it was the first time that had happened that I had a bunch of songs, and then I'd never had this before, that I was really, because this pool of this music was so compelling for me, and all I wanted to do was see it through. I was in this moment, and then I had to put everything on ice. But because it's Radiohead, I will do that, and I did that. But it's hard because the other thing is being in Radiohead and doing my own thing is completely different head. It's a completely different exercise. So the hard part, like I said, was So I had my EOB head on, and then I had to take that off and put the Radiohead head on, and you get into that. And then it was putting that EOB head back on, and then there was a little tour, and I had to put the Radiohead head back on. I'm not very good at doing, I like to be fully immersed in what I do and see it through. So I found it, to be honest, I found it pretty hard, and I guess I managed it, but it's a bit like when you're immersed in something, there's a flow, isn't there? And there's momentum. When you have to you have to shift course, you have to build up that momentum, that energy, that flow again. So each time I entered one world, I have to build up, well, particularly on my own stuff, I have to build up momentum, and it would take 3 or 4 weeks to get back into that place fully. I definitely struggled with it, but you know what? I mean, it's a struggle worth doing.
When do you realize that you're actually making an album to be released, as opposed to, say, keeping ideas in your computer hard drive for the group, or just noodling around with songs just for you and maybe not even release them at all?
Well, I think that there's a process in the demoing. Certainly when you're demoing, when you realize you have a bunch of songs and you listen back to them and you go, wow, I think I might have an album here. And it goes from, it's all stages, I think. So it's the first stage is each song bit by bit, and you focus on each song and you demo each song, or you've written a song and you demo it. And then you sit back and you go, actually, you know what, after like 3 weeks of demoing, I've got 10 or 11 songs here, and a lot of them I really like. In fact, I like all of them. So that's when you go, okay, well then I'm going to make an album. And with an album like mine, if you're going to make an album, that means a commitment of time, and it means a financial commitment as well, a commitment of other people's time. So when you embark upon that thing of actually making the album for proper, you then have to you're like, okay, this has to go out into the wider public. This has to go out into the world. That's when you're making that commitment. When you're asking all these amazing musicians, you're working with Flood. You've got management. You committed financially. That's when you go, okay, and that's when you have to see it through. But it's definitely around the demoing stage when you suddenly realize, oh, hang on a sec, I didn't know what this would be. I thought, well, I didn't know whether I was going to sing it. I just was compelled to write these songs. And in the process of singing these songs as demoing, it's something like, oh, hang on a sec, I can sing this. So you've got all this, it's sort of like a thing to being revealed as you go along.
Listening to Earth for the first time, I got really excited, and it wasn't the fact that it was you, but Flood and his production partner, Alan Mulder, work on it as well. Those two on the production side worked on some of my favorite albums by some of my favorite bands, people like Depeche Mode and U2 and Curve. They bring perfection and polish, but it still sounds a little bit rough around the edges. What do they bring to the album that excited you?
Yeah, they've got a certain sonic sensibility. They come from, on the craft part of it, they're very well, they come from the best, they come from Trident Studios. They've been the best, they're the best engineers. So they've got that down, and they've done so many, they start in the 80s, the early 80s. They've been through all these different, from analog tape to digital tape to hard drives, computers, sequences, MIDI, all this whole, the whole birthplace of dance, of electronic dances. They've done it all. So they have that. And they also have the experience of working with all these bands, like you said. So they also recognize, like Flood was a friend, first of all. I didn't want to ask him to produce me, although he was my number one, because I didn't want to put pressure on him as a friend and for him to say no and for him to like. But what he realized when he heard the demos, he heard something in it that very, very few people heard. And he was just like, oh, I want to work on this. And he asked me, he said, do you want me to work on this? And he recognized some stuff that he's worked on before that it had a similar kind of quality that he was moved by. And then the other thing, which is really important with both of them, is they're extremely humble people. There's so much humility. I remember, you know, they both are, they see the limitations in what they do, and they only, you know, we all have limitations, but I don't know many people in production and who I don't know anyone in music who overtly says, you know, I remember Alan saying to me one day, and he's one of the greatest mixers, he said, he was like laughing, he just killed our mix, and he kept turning to me and said, I don't really know what I'm doing. And I thought that that's such a beautifully humble thing for him to say, and he obviously does know what he's doing, but he doesn't, what that means is he still is wrapped by the same kind of, he's still insecure about, he wants to make great work, he's got that insecurity or that need to make great work and be great, and he's just relieved when he does it, you know, because, you know, he's not blasé, he doesn't take it for granted, he's as thrilled as he is now as he was then, and I think that's the same for both of them. They're extraordinary, they're fantastic human beings as well.
Thanks so much, Ed. The brand new album is called Earth, and it's available now.